My mother erased my sons from the Winter Wish board in front of 70 people, then smiled at the camera and said, "Grandparents get to decide what counts." My name is Tessa Rowe. I was 35 then, a payroll compliance analyst for the city of Fairlake, and I knew exactly what counted. Hours counted. Receipts counted. Camp rosters counted. So did the 2 dependent care reimbursements someone had filed in my name while my boys were home with me all summer. That night at the recreation center, my mother pinned gold stars beside my sister's children and left 2 empty hooks where Eli and Mason's tags should have been. Then she handed me a folder and told me not to make the holiday about paperwork. The reversal was already in my coat pocket. If you have ever watched a child get measured by an adult's favorite list, tell me in the comments what you would have done before you hear what I did. Because the paper my mother hated was the same paper that showed why my boys had been left off that board. It was not because they were rude. It was not because they had failed some family test. It was because putting their names up there would have made a city employee ask why 2 children who supposedly attended 7 weeks of summer camp had never walked through the door. The Winter Wish Board was my mother's project. Every December, the Fairlake Recreation Center filled one wall with paper mitten tags. Local businesses sponsored gifts, coats, and activity passes for children whose families needed help. It was supposed to be quiet and kind. My mother, Gloria Bell, turned it into a stage. She had chaired the volunteer committee for 3 years. She wore a red cardigan with a snowflake pin and carried a clipboard like it gave her authority over every child in the building. My father, Alan, stood beside her and told people she had the softest heart in the county. My younger sister, Marcy, filmed everything on her phone. Marcy's twins, Cooper and Callie, were 9. My boys were 8 and 6. Eli was the careful one, the kid who organized crayons by shade and asked if receipts were important because he saw me save them. Mason was loud, sticky, and funny. He still put his shoes on the wrong feet when he was excited. They loved that recreation center. We lived 3 blocks away. We used the basketball court on rainy Saturdays. We checked outboard games from the front desk. Eli learned to swim there after 2 summers of standing on the pool steps and negotiating with the lifeguard. Mason called the building the Big Gym House. So when my mother invited us to Winter Wish Night, both boys wanted to go. The invitation came in the family group, text the Monday after Thanksgiving. Winter Wish Recognition Night, 6 p.m. Thursday. Children who completed family kindness goals will be honored. Dress nice. I read it twice at my kitchen counter, while Mason peeled a banana from the wrong end. Family kindness goals. That phrase had my mother's fingerprints all over it. I asked her what it meant. She sent back a thumbs up in one sentence. The children know. They did not know. Eli asked if it meant helping me carry groceries. Mason asked if brushing teeth counted. I told them not to worry about it, but I felt that familiar pinch in my ribs. My mother had a way of inventing rules after my sister had already won them. I grew up under that system. Marcy needed help. Tessa could handle herself. Marcy cried. Tessa understood. Marcy got behind on rent. Tessa had a good job. Marcy's twins needed experiences. Tessa's boys had a mother who planned. My parents never said they loved my children less. They just kept creating rooms where that was the only conclusion left. 2 years earlier, my father bought Cooper and Callie new bikes for Christmas and gave Eli and Mason a board game with missing pieces from their basement closet. When Eli asked why Cooper got a bike, my father said, "Cooper is outside more." Eli was 7. He nodded like he was taking notes on how to become easier to love. That was the part I could not forgive. I was not rich, I was stable. There is a difference. I rented a small duplex, packed lunches, tracked every utility bill, and kept a savings envelope for school shoes. My ex-husband, Trent, paid support when the court reminded him. Most months I was the whole plan. My job was not dramatic. I audited payroll exceptions for the city. Overtime approvals, benefit deductions, dependent care reimbursements, uniform stipends, mileage claims. People think payroll is pushing buttons. It is not. It is a map of what people thought they could hide because the amounts were small enough to look boring. Small amounts built the biggest lies. That was why I noticed the first wrong number. In early November, I was reviewing my own open enrollment packet. City employees could set aside pre-tax money for dependent care. I had used that benefit once, 3 years earlier, for Mason's preschool. I knew the forms. I knew the limits. I also knew I had not filed a claim that year because my boys spent the summer with me, my neighbor Inez, and a rotating stack of library crafts. But my benefits screen showed 2 reimbursements already paid. June 28, $2,400. August 9, $2,850. Provider listed, Fair Lake Recreation's Summer Discovery Camp. Child names, Eli Rowe and Mason Rowe. Payment method, reloadable card mailed to employee address on file. I stared at that line longer than I should have needed to. My address had not changed. No card had arrived at my duplex. I clicked into the claim image. The receipt looked real at first glance. It had the recreation center logo, the camp director's signature, session dates, child names, and a line that said paid in full. It also had my electronic certification at the bottom. I had not certified it. I am not a person who panics at a wrong number. Wrong numbers are invitations. They ask you to pull the next record. So I did. I requested the claim packet from the benefits vendor. I pulled my own HR address history. I checked the card mailing log. The card had not been mailed to my duplex. It had been mailed to an alternate address added to my benefits profile on June 10, then removed on August 12. The alternate address was my parents' house. I sat at my desk after everyone else had left and watched the fluorescent lights reflect off the monitor. The cleaning crew rolled a cart past my door. Somewhere down the hall, the copier was warming itself for no one. I knew the address. I knew the timing. What I did not know yet was whether my parents had used my sons' names by mistake, or whether mistake was too soft a word. The next morning, I walked over to the recreation center on my lunch break. Fair Lake Rec was built in the 70s, all brick walls and glass blocks, with a trophy case full of soccer plaques no one dusted. The front desk clerk, Dana, knew my boys by name. She smiled when I came in and said, "No kids today." "Just a records question," I said. That sentence changes people's posture. Dana's smile stayed, but her fingers stopped tapping on the counter. I asked for attendance verification for Summer Discovery Camp. I said I needed it for a dependent care correction. That was true enough. She printed the roster for sessions 2 and 4. Eli and Mason were listed as full-week attendees, 7 weeks total. Drop-off authorized by Gloria Bell. Emergency contact Gloria Bell. Payment type scholarship offset. Scholarship offset. That was the second wrong number. I asked Dana what that meant. She frowned and pulled up the payment screen. "It means the kids were marked as covered by the Bell Family Activity Fund," she said. "Your mom's donor account. Then the balance was paid by card." "What card?" Dana glanced at the screen. "Last 44418. I did not recognize it. Then Dana clicked one more tab, and her expression changed. "That's odd," she said. I have learned to respect the word odd. In compliance work, odd usually means the system is about to stop pretending. "The check-ins were all batch entered," she said, "not scanned at the door." "Who entered them?" She hesitated. "Marcy Bell. She was volunteer coordinator for Camp Check in this year." I thanked her and asked for a printed copy. Dana said she had to ask the center director. I told her that was fine. Then I stood by the trophy case and watched a group of preschoolers walk past in a rope line, each child holding a colored loop. Mason would have narrated the whole thing. Eli would have noticed one loop was fraying. My boys were on that roster. Their bodies had never been in that hallway. That evening, I asked them about summer camp carefully, the way you ask a child a question when you already know an adult has made it complicated. Did Grandma ever take you to summer discovery camp? Eli looked up from his spelling list. No, she said it was full. Mason was building a tower from plastic cups. We did sprinkler days with Miss Inez. Did Aunt Marcy ever give you camp shirts? Eli shook his head. Cooper had one. He said we couldn't have them because we weren't signed up. That was the first thing that made the file feel alive. Not a document, my son's face. The document mattered because it explained the risk, but Eli's small, confused answer explained the wound. I did not call my mother. I did not call Marcy. I made a folder. The benefits vendor sent the full packet 6 days later. It included the 2 reimbursement claims, the altered address log, the mailed card record, the receipt image, and the IP address used to submit the certification. The IP address resolved to my parents' home internet. The electronic signature was mine in the lazy way people copy names from forms. Tessa M. Rowe, no flourish, no middle initial dot. I always use the dot. That sounds small. It was not small. It was the first sign that the person who used my name knew enough to copy it, but not enough to be me. The claim receipt said I had paid $5,250 in childcare expenses to Fair Lake Recreation. The Recreation Center's own record said most of the balance was covered by the Bell Family Activity Fund and the rest by a card ending in 4418. 2 systems told 2 different stories. That was the second turn. At work, when 2 systems disagree, you do not pick the one you like. You find the person who benefits from the mismatch. The person benefiting was not hard to find. Marcy had posted photos all summer. Cooper in a kayak, Callie holding a pottery bowl, Cooper and Callie in matching blue summer discovery shirts. My mother had commented under every photo. Making memories with children who appreciate them. Grandparents get to decide what counts. There it was again. The phrase had started as a family line. By then, it had become a cover story. I asked Inez to write down the dates she watched my boys. Inez lived next door and had been my emergency backup since Mason was born. She was 68, retired from the post office, and more precise than any payroll system I had ever used. She kept a wall calendar with appointments, trash pickup, church pantry days, and the boys' sprinkler afternoons written in blue marker. She invited me into her kitchen, made tea I did not ask for, and opened a drawer full of calendars. Your mother finally did something official with that foolishness, she asked. I looked at her. Inez did not look surprised. That was the part that made my stomach drop. She came by in June, Inez said. Asked if the boys were with me most days. I said yes. She said she needed to know for grandparent planning. I told her planning does not require interrogation. She flipped to June. Every weekday was marked. Eli and Mason after lunch. Sprinkler, library, movie, Eli dentist, Mason fever. Can I copy these? Inez slid the calendars across the table. Copy them, frame them, mail them to the mayor. I am tired of that woman making your children stand outside the circle. That was the next turn, the human witness before the official one. Still, I did not know why my mother had invited us to Winter Wish Night. If she and Marcy had used my boys' names to file camp reimbursements, why put us in the same building as the records? The answer came from a sponsor packet. Dana called me 2 days before Winter Wish Night. Her voice was low. Tessa, I can't release everything without our director, but you need to see something. Are you free at lunch? I was there in 12 minutes. She walked me into the little office behind the front desk. The center director, Martin Cho, sat at his computer with a stack of forms beside him. Martin was a careful man, early 50s, with reading glasses he kept pushing up his nose. This may involve city funds, he said, so I am treating it formally. I appreciated him for that. Formal meant recorded. Formal meant no one could later call it family confusion. He showed me the Bell Family Activity Fund ledger. My parents had opened it as a donor account to help deserving grandchildren and community youth, pay for camp and recreation fees. It sounded generous. Then Martin showed me the matching grant application. The city had a small employer-community partnership grant. If a donor fund supported children of city employees, local sponsors matched part of it. The application listed Eli and Mason as city employee children served by the fund. My boys' names did not just appear on a camp roster. They were used to unlock sponsor matching money. That was the midpoint turn. That was when I stopped thinking about a benefits mistake and started seeing a machine. My mother and Marcy had used my sons as proof of need, then used my name to reimburse payments I never made, then used the same fake participation to make the donor fund look eligible for city matching support. Meanwhile, Cooper and Callie were the children actually attending camp, wearing the shirts, taking the classes, and getting the gifts. My boys were useful on paper and inconvenient in person. Martin printed the grant page. Dana printed the check-in override log. Marcy's volunteer login appeared beside every batch entry. Martin said, "I am going to refer this to finance." I said, "I am finance." He looked at me over his glasses. "Then, I am going to refer it to finance in a way that does not put you in charge of your own case." That was the right answer. By the time Winter Wish Night arrived, the city finance office had opened a review. HR had locked my benefits profile. The vendor had suspended the card. Martin had sealed the camp files. I had copies of what I was allowed to have as the affected employee. I also had Inez's calendars, Eli and Mason's school summer reading logs, and photos from our sprinkler days with timestamps. My mother had a clipboard. I know which one I trusted. I did not tell the boys the details. Children should not have to carry adult fraud into a holiday room. I told them Winter Wish Night might be awkward, and if they felt uncomfortable, we could leave. Eli asked, "Will Grandma say we didn't count again?" There are questions that make you want to break something and answer softly at the same time. "If she does," I said, "that will be about Grandma, not you." Mason asked if there would be cookies. "Probably. Then I can be brave." 6-year-olds understand courage better than most adults. They know it is easier with cookies. We arrived at the recreation center at 5:55. The lobby smelled like coffee, construction paper, and wet coats. A folding table held sugar cookies shaped like mittens. The Winter Wish board covered the far wall, a big green felt display with paper tags hanging from silver hooks. Each tag had a child's first name, age, and a sponsor note. Cooper and Callie had gold stars next to their names. They also had new winter jackets draped over chairs in front of the board. My mother had written Bell Grandchildren Leadership Award on a white card in red marker. Eli scanned the board. I watched his eyes move left to right, then back again. He was looking for his name. Mason looked too, because he always followed Eli's face before he understood the room. There were 2 empty hooks near the bottom. No Eli, no Mason. My mother saw us and smiled too brightly. "There you are," she said. "We saved you seats." The seats were in the second row, off to the side, behind a pillar where the boys could see the board but not reach it. Marcy came over with her phone already recording. She wore a cream sweater and the satisfied expression of someone who thought the room had been arranged in her favor. "The kids are going to learn a lot tonight," she said. "Which kids?" I asked. Her smile twitched. My father hugged me with one arm and said, "Let's keep this pleasant." That was his role, not stopping harm, managing the volume after it happened. The program started at 6:10. Martin welcomed everyone. A bank manager thanked the sponsors. 2 city council members stood near the coffee. Dana sat at the front desk, not smiling. Then my mother stepped up with her clipboard. "Every year," she said, "we recognize children who show gratitude, effort, and family spirit." Eli's hand slipped into mine. My mother read Cooper's name. Applause. Cooper stood grinning while Marcy filmed. My mother read Callie's name. More applause. Then she paused. She looked directly at my boys. Some children are still learning that family support is earned by attitude, she said. Grandparents get to decide what counts. The room made that small, uncomfortable sound polite rooms make when cruelty is dressed like a lesson. Mason leaned against my leg. Eli stared at the empty hooks. I stood. My mother blinked. She had expected me to take it. That was the pattern. She performed, I absorbed, my boys got quiet, and later my father told me she meant well. Patterns are just habits waiting for a record to break them. Before you finish, I said, I need the empty hooks explained. My mother's smile hardened. This is not the time, Tessa. It is exactly the time, I said. Their names were used in this building all summer. If they count on the roster, they count on the wall. Marcy lowered her phone. That was the first visible shift. My father stood halfway. Tessa, don't turn this into one of your paperwork things. It already is one. I took the thin folder from my coat pocket. It was blue, not red, because I had no interest in making it look like a gift. Inside were 6 pages, not every record, just enough to make the room stop cooperating with the lie. Martin stepped forward before my mother could speak. Mrs. Bell, he said, I asked Ms. Rowe to bring the affected employee documents tonight. Finance has already scheduled a review for tomorrow morning. My mother's face changed, not guilt, calculation. Marcy said, affected employee, what does that even mean? Dana answered from the front desk. It means someone used her employee benefit record. The bank manager stopped pouring coffee. My mother whispered, Dana. Dana did not move. That was the moment the room became a witness room, even before the official one. People turned toward the board, toward the empty hooks, toward my boys. I opened the folder. My dependent care account shows $5,250 in reimbursements for summer camp, I said. The claims say Eli and Mason attended summer discovery camp here. They did not. My mother laughed once. This is ridiculous. Children forget things. Eli's voice was small but clear. I didn't forget summer. I wished he had not had to say it. I was proud of him for saying it. The room went quiet in a different way. I did not hand the pages to my mother. I handed them to Martin. Authority matters. If you give proof to the person who hurt you, they turn it into a debate. If you give it to the person who has to act, it becomes a record. Martin read the first page and nodded. The city benefit vendor confirms 2 claims, he said. Provider listed as this center. Child names Eli and Mason Rowe. My mother said, those forms are confusing. Gloria could have made a mistake. She spoke about herself in third person when she wanted sympathy. She had done it my whole life. Dana stepped forward with her own sheet. The attendance entries were batch overrides, she said. They were not door scans. Marcy's face flushed. We had system issues that week. For 7 weeks, Dana asked. That was the first crack from someone inside the building. My mother gripped her clipboard. The children were covered by the family fund. We were helping. You were helping Cooper and Callie, I said, using Eli and Mason's names. Marcy snapped. My kids needed camp too. There it was, not denial, need. Need is the word people use when they want the harm to sound generous. I looked at her. Then you should have applied in their names. My father stepped between us slightly, still trying to manage the shape of the room. No one stole anything, he said. Grandparents get to decide what counts. For the first time, that sentence sounded thin. Martin closed the folder. This discussion needs to stop here. The formal review is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Finance, HR, the benefits vendor, and Recreation Administration will attend. Mrs. Bell, Ms. Bell, Mr. Bell, you have been asked to attend. My mother looked like someone had turned off music. She was dancing too. Then Mason tugged my sleeve. Can we go home? That mattered more than anything else in the room. Yes, I said. We left before the cookies were served. Eli held my hand all the way to the car. Mason cried because he had been brave and still did not get a cookie. I stopped at the grocery store and bought a tube of sugar cookie dough and a small box of colored icing. At home, we baked 12 crooked stars on a sheet pan. While the cookies cooled, Eli asked, "Were we on a secret list?" I sat beside him at the table. "Your names were used on a wrong list," I said. "Tomorrow the adults who keep those lists are going to fix it." "Did Grandma know?" I did not lie. "Yes." He nodded slowly. Mason put too much icing on one cookie and said, "Then she doesn't get this one." That was his boundary. It was simple and correct. The official review happened the next morning in the recreation center's multi-purpose room. Not a courtroom, not a dramatic hearing, just a long table under a bulletin board covered with paper snowflakes. But the people at that table had power. There was Martin, the center director, Grace Patel from City HR, Nolan Reeves from the benefits vendor on a video screen, Dana with the attendance logs, a finance deputy named Mr. Alvarez, the bank sponsor who had matched the activity fund, Inez because her calendar mattered. My mother, my father, Marcy, and Marcy's ex-husband, Kevin, who arrived looking like he had been called into a school office for someone else's child, and then realized it might be his own. I came alone. The boys were with Inez's sister, making paper chains and eating leftover cookies. They had already given enough. My mother wore the red cardigan again. She had removed the snowflake pin. Marcy kept checking her phone. My father had a yellow legal pad and no pen. Grace from HR started the review. "This is an administrative fact-finding meeting," she said. "The purpose is to determine whether employee benefit records, recreation attendance records, donor funds, or sponsor funds were misrepresented." My mother folded her hands. "This is a family misunderstanding." Grace looked at the attendance log. "No," she said, "it is not limited to family." That was the first official turn. An authority removed the word misunderstanding. Nolan from the benefits vendor explained the claims first. He did not use dramatic language. He did not need to. 2 dependent care claims were submitted under employee Tessa Rowe's login. The mailing address was changed to 418 Willow Crest Drive on June 10 and changed back on August 12. The reimbursement card was activated from a phone number ending 7721. That was my mother's number. My father looked at her. Not at me, at her. It was the first time I saw him realize he had not been told the whole version either. My mother said, "I handle paperwork for the family." Grace said, "Not for city employees without authorization." Marcy leaned forward. "Tessa gave Mom permission for all kinds of things. She always has." "Not this," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were cold under the table. Nolan continued. The IP address for both claim submissions was my parents' home internet. The reimbursement card was used at a sporting goods store, a uniform shop, and 3 online purchases connected to camp supplies. Then Dana read the check-in override log. Every entry for Eli and Mason had been added after 4 p.m. by Marcy's volunteer account. No door scan, no swim band scan, no lunch count connected to their names. Martin asked Marcy, "Why did you batch enter children who were not present?" Marcy's mouth opened, then closed. My mother answered for her. The twins attended with them some days. The names got mixed. Kevin, Marcy's ex-husband, looked up sharply. "Cooper and Callie attended every day," he said. "I dropped them on Tuesdays. I have the custody calendar." Marcy turned toward him. "Kevin." He stared at her. "Did you put my kids on somebody else's scholarship?" That was the strongest kind of turn. The kind where the villain's own circle starts asking the question you were told not to ask. Mr. Alvarez, the finance deputy, opened the grant packet. He had a calm face and a voice like a locked filing cabinet. "The Bell Family Activity Fund received a $3,000 sponsor match after certifying that 2 children of a city employee were served. The bank's sponsor's representative, Ms. Quinn, took off her glasses. Our bank matched that fund because it supported city employee families, she said. If those children did not attend, our funds were obtained under a false description. My mother turned red. The money still helped children. Not the children named, Ms. Quinn said. That sentence did more damage than anger could have. My mother tried the phrase again. Grandparents get to decide what counts. Grace looked at her for a full second. No, she said. Benefit plans decide what qualifies. Attendance records decide who attended. Sponsors decide what they fund based on accurate applications. Grandparents do not override those rules. The room did not need a speech after that. Inez opened her calendar. She had copied June, July, and August. Each page had neat blue notes. Eli and Mason with me, sprinkler, library, Eli tooth, Mason fever, park picnic, movie day, no camp. These boys were at my house, she said. I fed them peanut butter sandwiches and made them rinse grass off their feet before they came inside. They were not at camp. My mother looked at Inez, as if betrayal was something that happened when witnesses refused to stay neighborly. You don't know our family, she said. Inez tapped the calendar. I know dates. That might be the cleanest sentence anyone said that day. The meeting moved from suspicion to consequence after that. You could feel it. At first, people were gathering facts. Then they started correcting systems. Grace locked my dependent care account and opened an unauthorized access report. Nolan confirmed the $5,250 would be reversed out of my taxable benefit record, while the vendor pursued recovery from the card recipient. Mr. Alvarez suspended the Bell Family Activity Fund pending audit. Ms. Quinn froze the sponsor match and requested repayment if the city confirmed misrepresentation. Martin removed Marcy's volunteer access while the review continued. My mother kept trying to pull the room back into feelings. Tessa has always been sensitive about Marcy, she said. Grace did not look up from her notes. This is not about sensitivity. Marcy needed help. Ms. Quinn said, the application had a hardship line. It did not require using other children's names. You are making me sound like a criminal. Mr. Alvarez finally looked at her. I am describing records. That was the story in one sentence. Records do not care what tone you prefer. Then came the page I had not seen. Martin slid a printed email into the center of the table. This was recovered from the recreation office account this morning, he said. It was sent from Mrs. Bell to Ms. Bell on June 9. My mother's face went still. Martin read it because he was the authority in that room. Tessa won't use the camp benefit unless we make it useful. Put Eli and Mason under the fund so the city match qualifies. Cooper and Callie can attend. Grandparents get to decide what counts. There it was in writing. Not confusion, plan. Marcy whispered, Mom. It was the first time. She sounded young to me in years. My father pushed back from the table. The chair legs scraped the floor. Gloria, he said, you told me Tessa signed off. My mother did not answer him. She looked at me instead, angry in the way cornered people get angry when the old tools stop working. You always act like you are better because you know forms. I did not respond right away. I had imagined this moment many times in the previous month. In my imagination, I said something sharp, something that made every head turn. Real life was quieter. No, I said. I know forms because forms are how people like you get around people like me. Nobody clapped, nobody gasped. This was not that kind of story. But Grace stopped writing for a second. Inez reached under the table and squeezed my wrist once. Then the meeting continued, because consequences do not wait for perfect lines. By the end of that first review, 4 things happened before my mother left the room. My benefits record was marked disputed and protected. The vendor blocked the unauthorized card and opened recovery. Marcy's recreation volunteer access was terminated. The Bell Family Activity Fund was suspended from Winter Wish and summer camp scholarships pending audit. The sponsor match was frozen the same day. That was the practical beginning, not the end, the beginning. My mother stood up slowly. What about the gifts tonight? It was such a strange question that no one answered at first. She meant the Winter Wish board, the jackets, the sponsor cards, the public image she had built around her generosity. Martin said, "The board is being corrected." Corrected how? Children whose names were used in fund records will not be erased from recognition. Children who received services will be listed accurately. Donor attribution will be removed until the audit is complete. My mother looked at me like I had stolen Christmas from her. She still did not look at Eli or Mason, even though they were the ones she had erased. That afternoon, I took the boys back to the recreation center because Martin asked if I would be comfortable. I almost said no. Then I thought about Eli staring at the empty hooks and Mason asking to go home before the cookies. Avoiding the room would have protected my comfort. It would not have corrected their memory. We walked in at 4:30. The lobby was quiet. Dana was at the front desk with a roll of silver ribbon. Martin stood by the Winter Wish board. The empty hooks were gone. 2 blue mitten tags hung at eye level. Eli Rowe, age 8. Summer reader, pool step graduate, basketball helper. Mason Rowe, age 6. Sprinkler expert, cookie brave, fastest puzzle sorter. I had to look away for a second. Martin cleared his throat. Dana wrote the puzzle sorter part. Dana pretended to organize pens. Mason walked up to the board and touched his tag with one finger. "I count now," he asked. I knelt beside him. "You counted before. The board was wrong." Eli read his tag twice. "Pool step graduate," he said. "That's true." Truth does not have to be large to matter. Sometimes it is a child seeing one accurate sentence after a room gave him a lie. That evening, my mother sent a text. "You humiliated me at my own event." I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. Then I wrote one sentence. "You used my children where they were useful and erased them where they were visible." She did not answer. Marcy called twice. I let it go to voicemail. The second message was half crying, half accusation. "You know Mom gets carried away. You know I needed summer care. Kevin was fighting me on expenses. You have a city job, you have benefits. I thought it would even out." Even out. People who take from you always think balance means they end up comfortable. I saved the voicemail and sent it to Grace. The audit took 9 weeks. 9 weeks is a long time when your family is telling everyone you ruined a children's charity. My mother was good at that part. She called relatives. She told church friends. She told the woman who ran the bakery that I had weaponized city rules over a camp mix-up. By New Year's Day, I had heard 3 versions of the story from people who barely knew me. In one version, I had reported my mother because my boys did not get jackets. In another, I was jealous of Marcy's twins. In the worst one, I had tried to take gifts away from needy children. That one made me sit in my car outside the grocery store for 10 minutes before I could drive. I wanted to defend myself publicly. I wanted to post screenshots. I wanted to write one clean paragraph that made everyone understand. But city reviews are not group texts. I had been told not to discuss the active audit beyond what was necessary. So I stayed quiet. Quiet is not always weakness. Sometimes quiet is chain of custody. And if someone in your life keeps calling paperwork drama, share this and subscribe, because sometimes the paper is the only reason the quiet person finally gets believed. The boys noticed pieces of it. Children always do, no matter how carefully adults sweep. Eli asked why Grandma had not called on New Year's. Mason asked if Aunt Marcy's kids were mad at us. I told them the truth in child-sized pieces. The adults were fixing records. Grandma and Aunt Marcy were upset because wrong choices had consequences. Cooper and Callie were not responsible for adult choices. That last part mattered. I did not want my boys learning the same lesson my mother taught. Children are not responsible for being used as props. Kevin brought Cooper and Callie to the park one Saturday in January. It was awkward for the first 5 minutes. Then Mason asked Cooper if he wanted to race to the slide, and the children solved what the adults had made heavy. Kevin stood beside me near the benches. "I didn't know," he said. "I believe you. Marcy told me her parents covered camp." "They did," I said, "just not in the way you thought." He rubbed his face. "The twins are changing programs. I won't let their names stay in that mess." That was the first family consequence that felt clean, not punishment, correction. The audit found more than I expected. The Bell Family Activity Fund had started as a real donor account. My parents put in $1,000 the first year. A local hardware store added $500. The fund paid for 2 swim passes for neighborhood kids. That was the version my father knew. Then my mother and Marcy learned that funds serving city employee children could qualify for sponsor matches. My boys became useful. Over 2 summers, Eli and Mason's names were listed on 3 camp sessions they did not attend, 1 swim scholarship they did not use, and 1 holiday activity package that went to Marcy's house. My dependent care benefit was touched only that last summer, which was lucky for me and bad for their story. It showed escalation. First, they used the boys' names in the donor fund. Then they used my employee record to pull reimbursement money. Then they erased the boys at Winter Wish Night so no one would ask why the children named in the fund were not receiving anything from it. The lie had a sequence. That is what people forget. A lie is not one moment. It is maintenance. It has to be fed, adjusted, protected, and performed. My mother performed hers on a felt board with gold stars. The final review happened in February during a Public Recreation Commission finance session. Not a court, not a criminal trial, but public enough that the lie could not hide behind family language anymore. The room held 6 commission members, the city finance director, HR, Martin, Dana, Ms. Quinn from the bank, a city attorney, my parents, Marcy, Kevin, Inez, and me. A few residents sat in the back because commission finance sessions were open. Most were there for a pickleball court budget item and got a very different evening. I wore a gray sweater and brought 1 folder. I did not bring the boys. My mother wore navy and pearls. She looked composed until Ms. Quinn sat down 2 chairs away. Marcy looked tired. My father looked smaller than he had in December. The finance director, Helen Marr, summarized the findings. The audit confirms misrepresentation in the Bell Family Activity Fund, unauthorized use of employee dependent care benefit access, inaccurate recreation attendance records, and sponsor match eligibility errors. Eligibility errors. That was the official phrase. It sounded soft. Then she read the numbers. $5,250 in unauthorized dependent care reimbursements. $3,000 sponsor match frozen and reversed. $1,760 in recreation services allocated to children not named in the application. 2 years of donor restrictions violated. 1 employee record accessed without authorization. My mother stared straight ahead. Then Helen said, "The named employee, Ms. Rowe, is not responsible for the claims. Her tax record will be corrected. The benefits vendor has issued a correction and recovery notice." That was my first official receipt, beginning to become real. The city attorney explained the referrals: benefits vendor recovery, recreation volunteer ban, sponsor fund repayment, possible civil fraud review if repayment was not made, no future city-sponsored donor account controlled by Gloria Bell, Alan Bell, or Marcy Bell without finance oversight. My father flinched at his name. He asked to speak. Helen allowed it. He stood with both hands on the back of the chair. I opened the fund because Gloria said it would help the grandkids and some neighborhood kids. I did not know Tessa's benefits were involved. I should have checked. I should have asked why Eli and Mason were on forms for programs they didn't attend. My mother turned toward him. Alan. He did not sit down. No, he said. You told me grandparents decide what counts. I should have known that was not an answer. It was not enough. It did not fix what he had allowed. But it was the first time he had said the pattern out loud in a room where it cost him something. Marcy spoke next. She cried before the first sentence was done. She said she was overwhelmed. She said childcare was expensive. She said Kevin did not understand the pressure. She said Mom had told her it was fine because Tessa never used all her benefits anyway. Grace from HR corrected that immediately. Dependent care accounts are employee-elected funds. They are not family pools. There was no anger in her voice. That made it stronger. My mother waited until everyone else had spoken. Then she stood and tried one last time. I have spent years helping this community, she said. I made one mistake trying to make sure children had opportunities. Helen looked down at the report. The audit identifies repeated actions across multiple dates. You don't understand our family. Helen looked at her then. I do not need to understand your family to understand our records. That was the line that ended it. My mother sat down. The commission voted to accept the audit findings, remove my mother as Winter Wish Chair, bar Marcy from volunteer roles involving attendance or payments, require repayment to the sponsor fund, and refer the benefits issue to the vendor's recovery unit and the city attorney. The Bell Family Activity Fund name was retired. A new scholarship process would use direct attendance scans, guardian verification, and finance review before any sponsor match. It sounded procedural when written that way. In the room, it felt like a wall moving. Not toward me, away from my children. After the vote, Ms. Quinn stood and removed 2 old sponsor posters from a display easel near the door. They had my mother's name on them in big letters. Martin held the easel steady while she slid the posters into a recycling bin. That small action landed harder than the numbers. My mother saw it. Her face tightened, but she said nothing. The system had stopped honoring the version of her that required my boys to disappear. The corrected tax form arrived 11 days later, a W-2C and a benefits adjustment letter. My dependent care income was corrected to 0 for the false claims. The vendor confirmed I owed nothing. My account was locked with a verbal passphrase only I knew. The unauthorized reimbursement card balance had been assigned to recovery under my mother's phone number and address. I read the letter at my kitchen table while Eli did homework and Mason lined up toy cars by color. There was no music, no dramatic feeling, just a page that said in plain language that the record had been corrected. I slid it into a folder labeled Benefits Corrected. Eli looked up. Is that the grown-up list? One of them. Is it fixed? This part is. He nodded and went back to spelling words. Children trust corrected records faster than adults do, maybe because they have not yet learned how many ways people can argue with facts. The part that made it feel real came in March. Fairlake Rec held its spring open house on a Saturday morning. The new scholarship board was smaller, simpler, and less theatrical. No gold stars, no deserving language, just activity passes, program dates, and sponsor names. Children did not have to stand there while adults measured them. Martin invited Eli to help demonstrate the pool safety station because he had finally passed his depend test. Eli took the job seriously. He wore a whistle he was not allowed to blow and showed younger kids how to choose the right size float belt. Mason worked the puzzle table with Dana. She made him a name tag that said Mason Rowe, Puzzle Captain. He wore it crooked and corrected anyone who called him helper. I stood near the doorway with coffee in a paper cup and watched my boys move through that building like it belonged to them again. Inez came up beside me. You breathing? She asked. Mostly. She handed me a sugar cookie from the snack table. It was shaped like a star and had too much icing. Across the lobby, my father came in alone. I saw him before the boys did. He looked older. He held a small envelope in both hands. For a second, the old part of me wanted to step into the hallway and manage the discomfort for everyone. Then I stayed where I was. He walked over slowly. "I won't stay," he said. I did not answer. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check made out to Fairlake Recreation Scholarship Fund, not to the Bell Fund. The amount was $1,760, the recreation services allocation named in the audit. There was also a handwritten note. "For Eli and Mason's names being used wrong. This does not make it right. It is just the part I can repay first." I read it twice. "Did Mom know you came?" "No." "Are you asking to see the boys?" He looked past me. Eli was helping a little girl adjust a float belt. Mason was explaining puzzle corners to a toddler with great authority. "Not today," he said. "I have not earned today." That was the first sentence from him that did not try to decide what counted for someone else. I took the envelope to Martin. He gave my father a receipt from the new fund, not a hug, not forgiveness, just a receipt. That was appropriate. My father left before the boys noticed him. I did not tell them that day. Adult repair can wait until it is stable enough not to collapse on a child. My mother never apologized. She sent one long email about humiliation, community reputation, and how modern daughters use systems against families. I did not answer. The city attorney had already told me not to engage while recovery was open, and for once I was grateful for a rule that required silence. Marcy entered a repayment plan through the benefits vendor. Kevin moved the twins to a different summer program and sent me the new registration in their real names. He did not have to do that. I appreciated that he did. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, called me in April and said she had removed my mother from the church giving committee. Not because I asked, because the audit was public and committees that handle money need people who understand consent. Consequences kept arriving in small, ordinary envelopes. The most important change was quieter. Eli stopped asking if he had done something wrong. Mason stopped asking whether Grandma would be at every family event before deciding if he wanted to go. We made our own summer plan. 2 weeks of city camp, paid from my actual dependent care account with my actual password and my actual children walking through the door. 3 weeks with Inez. 1 cheap weekend at a lake cabin where Eli kept every brochure and Mason tried to bring home 7 rocks. On the first morning of camp, Dana scanned their wristbands at the front desk. Beep for Eli. Beep for Mason. 2 clean sounds. No batch override, no fake roster, no hidden address, no adult deciding they counted only where they could be useful. I kept the printed receipt in my wallet for the rest of the summer, not because I was afraid the record would vanish, because sometimes a small correct thing feels good to touch. In December, the recreation center put up the winter wish board again. I almost did not go. Then Mason brought home a flyer and said, "This one doesn't say deserving." He was right. The new board said winter program support. Children could pick activity tags if they wanted to. No public ranking. No family awards. No adult speeches about gratitude. Eli chose a swim tag for a younger kid. Mason chose Puzzle Club because he said puzzles were serious work. We bought both gifts ourselves, nothing expensive. A towel, goggles, a puzzle mat, and a box of colored pencils. The boys wrote the tags at our kitchen table. Eli printed carefully. Mason made his letters too large and ran out of room. When we dropped the gifts at the rec center, Dana handed the boys 2 blank mitten tags. "These are extras," she said. "You can hang them if you want." Eli wrote his own name on one, not for a gift, just to place it there. Mason wrote his name backward on the other and drew a cookie beside it. They hung them on the side of the board, not because they needed approval, but because the wall was no longer dangerous. That was the part that stayed with me. 2 names on a board that had once made them feel invisible. Not gold stars, not a speech, just Eli standing on tiptoe to straighten Mason's crooked tag while Mason told him crooked was more fun. I still have the corrected benefits letter in the folder. I still have the first real camp receipt in my wallet, worn soft at the folds. I still have a photo of those 2 mitten tags on my phone. My mother can keep her sentence. Grandparents get to decide what counts. In our life now, records count. Consent counts. Children count whether they are useful to an adult or not. And when my boys walked out of the recreation center that night, each carrying 1 leftover sugar cookie from a table nobody made them earn, I did not feel like I had won a fight. I felt like the room had finally learned their names.